Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This book takes place during World War II in Nazi Germany. The main character, Liesel, ends up witnessing her brother's death, and then she goes with her mother to the gravesite to bury her brother. And when she's there, one of the gravediggers drops this book called The Gravedigger's Handbook. And for some reason she picks up the book, and this is the first book that the book thief has stolen. And it sets off sort of like this chain of events for the rest of her life and the rest of this story at least. Liesel's mom ends up dropping off Liesel at someone else's home. Basically, her mother realizes that she can't take care of her kids anymore, and so she was going to drop off both Liesel and her brother, but obviously her brother passes away on the way there. So it's just Liesel in this house all by herself with her parents. Liesel's new foster parents are named Hans and Rosa Huberman. Rosa, her foster mom, doesn't really seem all that interested in having Liesel around, or she seems really mean. She swears a lot in German, things like that, and so Liesel's not that comfortable around her in the beginning, but she has a taking to her foster dad, Hans, and almost immediately she starts calling, or the narrator refers to him as Papa. So you can tell that she feels very close to him. Because Liesel is very poor, or came from a very poor family, things like that, she's not very educated. So when she starts school, she's put in the kindergarten class because she doesn't even know her letters. And it makes her feel really dumb, and she doesn't want to try or anything like that. Her foster father, Hans, decides that he's going to teach her how to read. He doesn't know very much. He dropped out, I think they say, in like 4th grade or something like that. So he doesn't even know that much, but he decides that he's going to try to teach her anything that he does know. So they start basically going through the letters and eventually words, and then reading books together and things like that. The Book Thief is a very interesting book. It's very different from anything else that I've read recently. The writing style in here took a little bit for me to get used to, just because it seems to go back and forth between the narrator, and then there are like these little inserts. It'll be like center bolded text where it's like Liesel's thoughts or one of the other characters' thoughts or things that they're saying. So it kind of jumps back and forth, and it always took me a minute to kind of adjust to that and realize like what those blocks of text are referring to, because it doesn't always refer to the same thing, and it isn't always like crystal clear or written out perfectly who or what is saying that. So sometimes I had to reread those sections just to be like, wait, who's saying that, or what is this talking about, things like that, so that way I completely understood. And sometimes it's actually repetitive where the narrator will say something happened, and then you'll see like Liesel saying that phrase in the bolded text. So it took a little bit for me to get used to, but by the end of the book I was fine with it and I caught on. We end up meeting a lot of characters throughout this book, either their neighbors and the people who live throughout their neighborhood and in the area, or her schoolmates. The characters really are kind of the most compelling part of this story. Because it takes place in World War II in Nazi Germany, that not everything is going to turn out that well for these people, and so you're kind of reading the story and you're thinking in your head, or at least I was thinking in my head, who's gonna end up going off to war, who's gonna live, who's gonna die. One of the main minor characters in this book is named Rudy, and it's basically Liesel's best friend and one of Liesel's only friends throughout this entire story. It's a boy her age, and they end up just being friends pretty quickly, and they stick together throughout the entire book, and it's really beautiful to see that and just to see this relationship develop. One of the first things that happens is Rudy ends up asking Liesel for a kiss, and then she says no, she doesn't want to kiss him, and then throughout the book like different things will happen and Rudy will do things for Liesel, and then he'll end up asking for a kiss and she'll always say no, and you kind of see that sort of early budding childhood romance happening, and it's really cute. I think those two were probably my favorite relationship to see going throughout this story, and just seeing how they grow up and how they react to different things and how they're reacting to the war around them. Another really interesting aspect to this book is the fact that because it takes place in Nazi Germany, you kind of see things from a different perspective. Obviously, living in America or a non-German country, I'm sure it's like this in other parts of the world too. When you're studying World War II, you kind of see Germany as the enemy. Anyone who took part in any of this is seen as being evil and needs to be destroyed, things like that. But at the same time, you're reading this book and you see that there are real people in here who don't necessarily have a choice, or who are so poor that they're desperate for anything that looks like it could help. And you see that not everyone in Germany agreed with Hitler and the things he was doing, but at the same time there was very little that they could do to stop him. The book progresses over the years of World War II, and as it continues on, what ends up happening is there are air raids and bombs going off in near the neighborhoods where they live. And so, you know, they'll hear a siren and they'll have to run into someone's basement and then, you know, hide there until they hear the all clear siren. And it's really sad because I know that the people who are bombing them are probably Americans, or, you know, they're the side that, you know, we would have been on, quote unquote, if I was living in that time. And yet at the same time, I'm like angry at them or upset at them, the fact that they're bombing these countries or these areas. And it's like, these are residents who have no part in the war really, and they're not doing anything, but it's only because, you know, their aim is only so good, or they know that nearby is something that they need to destroy, but yet these casualties happen, and it's so sad to see. Some of the things that really surprised me about this book is the narrator. The narrator is actually a character in this book, kind of. Yeah, I would say it's a character in this book on its own, but I didn't realize it in the beginning. I just thought it was sort of that third person omniscient character, or a type of narrator where they just see everything and are telling the story, you know, from an outside perspective. But it actually is a character that gets revealed later on, or at least I didn't realize it until later on. And then about maybe halfway through the book, I realized what was happening and who the narrator was, and I thought that was a very, very interesting choice by the author to make. I don't want to spoil it, but it's definitely something that I found very interesting and very different point of view for this book. And especially the way the ending of the book goes and things like that, I thought it was a really smart move to make that character the narrator of the book. Another thing about this book that I really enjoyed is just the fact of how much it makes you think. I already mentioned earlier about how it makes you think about, you know, the other people living in Germany who don't have a choice or are desperate, and why people would choose to be a part of the Nazi regime and things like that. And so that is already going through your mind, but then at the same time you end up thinking, what would I do in those situations? We live in very privileged times, or at least I live in a very privileged time, where I don't have to worry about my house being bombed, or I don't have to worry about my parents being drafted, or people I love being drafted into war and things like that. And so it definitely made me think, you know, if I was in this situation, what would I do? What would I choose to do? Would I have tried to help the Jews, or would I have tried to just make myself be okay and just kind of stay under the radar so that way I and the ones I love don't get hurt? Or would I have tried to stand up for what I know is right and things like that? And it's always really hard to answer those questions because you don't really know until you're in that situation. I mean, obviously we all say what we would prefer to do, but at the same time, how do we really know if that's what we would actually do in this situation? This is a book I would highly, highly, highly recommend to people if they haven't read it yet. It definitely made me cry at certain points, or at least tear up. And the characters, you kind of fall in love with them, and then when bad things happen to them, you're kind of heartbroken about it. If those are the things you look for in a book, I highly recommend this one. If you've read The Book Thief, I'd love to hear your comments about what you thought about it, who your favorite characters were, things like that. So feel free to leave a comment below, or if maybe you've done your own review, feel free to leave that as a video response as well. As usual, I'll leave links to my Goodreads, Tumblr, and Twitter below if you want to follow me on those, as well as subscribe to my channel on YouTube. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching. Today I'm going to be talking about the book, The Book Thief. That sounds weird. Today I'm going to be talking about The Book Thief. Today I'm going to be talking about The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I'm going to mess that up in every take. Markus Zusak. The main character, Liesel, when she goes with her mother to bury her son. The gravedigger's there drops this book called The Gravedigger's Hand Guide, hand guide. Having stepkids, or foster kids I should say, and dang it. Silence your phones before recording.